The eyes of Texas, to a certain extent, always on Texas A&M, but to a large extent here recently in college football, the entire college football nation eyes on the Aggies and Jimbo Fisher. And the spring game is coming up on a Saturday. We got Travis Brown on the line from the Eagle to help us break down the Aggies. Travis, how's it going today?
Hey, going well. It's always good when you get to that springtime. There's baseball in the air. There's spring football. Everything's going on. It's a good time to be watching sports.
No doubt. No doubt. Before we get to what we expect to see on Saturday, Luke Matthews, of course, part of that mammoth Matthews legacy, football legacy, that's just incredible in terms of the Matthews family. And of course, that's been both in the Texas A&M community as well. Unfortunately, has decided to retire from football.
Yeah, he's a guy that was supposed to step in and be maybe competing for that center role, but has had some shoulder issues, some arm issues that have just constantly nagged him. He's never really gotten any playing time since he's been at A&M, and then just went ahead and decided to take that medical exemption, that medical scholarship, and finish out his college career away from football. But the Aggies are in good hands with Bryce Foster, a freshman who stepped in last year. Hadn't necessarily played a whole lot of center moving into last year, but was able to fit right in and did some really great things for the Aggies on that offensive line last year. So I think he is certainly the guy moving forward, and definitely Matthews was going to have to put up some fierce competition to move past him in the depth chart this year had he been healthy.
Now, Travis, it was a top unit, speaking of the offensive line, 2 years ago. Everybody left besides Kenyon Green. He comes back last season as kind of the anchor along that offensive front, but maybe they took a step back. But now I believe they've got a lot of production coming back. So your thoughts about the offensive front?
Yeah, I mean, beyond what Bryce Foster was able to do, you have Layden Robinson, who stepped in last year. You have Ruben Fadre, who's a sophomore, who did really, really turn some heads on that offensive line as well, who's returning with a lot of experience. And then it's really just fitting in who's going to take that spot from Kenyon Green. Trey Zune the third is a guy who will probably factor in there. Aki Agumbi is a guy who can factor in at right guard, who had some experience at the beginning of last year. They lose an All-American, but they have a line that actually has a decent amount of experience coming into next year. It's just, you always want to see what that cohesion looks like. You can have 5 guys who are all really talented, but sometimes it just doesn't necessarily mesh well, or sometimes it meshes just fantastically, like you mentioned 2 years ago with that offensive line and what it was able to do, finishing second in the Joe Moore Award that year. So it will be interesting to see how they kind of all mesh together. But like I said, there's experience there.
Got Travis Brown on the line from the Eagle. Check out his work right there covering Texas A&M athletics. The spring game coming up from Kyle Field on Saturday, 2 Eastern, 1 Central. Travis, now looking at the quarterback position, of course, that's gaining a slew of attention, of course, and did at this point last season. Haynes King emerged as the starter, went down against Colorado. Zach Calzada finished it out. He's on to Auburn. So now we've got King. We've got Max Johnson through 27 touchdowns at LSU, and I find it ironic, led the game-winning drive and game-winning touchdown pass in his final plays there at LSU against Texas A&M. Connor Wiegman's a 5-star who may factor into this. What are you looking to see on Saturday between these three?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see who is the guy who has the command and the control of the offense the best, because there's going to be some throws, they're going to keep the plays pretty vanilla, there's going to be some mistakes here and there, but who is the guy that seems like the team rallies around? That's something that Jimbo Fisher has frequently talked about when it comes to choosing a quarterback. And so that's always the main thing to look at. You mentioned Max Johnson in that LSU game last year. It's funny, we talked to Damani Richardson earlier this week, safety for the Aggies, and he said that he really likes Max Johnson because he's a competitor, and he likes to jokingly trash talk with Damani on the other side of the ball, and he'll frequently say, "Hey, who won that game last year?" And so that kind of comes back into play, and that they'll joke about that a little bit on the field. But I think as far as what to expect moving forward, I think if I were to bet my money, I think the easy bet, the safe bet, is on Haynes King to win the job again. He won it last year. He has some very explosive playmaking ability, especially with his legs. Can also throw the ball. But what I've said is, if I'm betting your money, I might go with Connor Wegman. The way Jimbo Fisher has talked about him is just absolutely, he's raved about him since signing day. And even when talking about other quarterbacks that were out there in that class, including the transfer from Ohio State, Quinn Ewers, who went to Texas, Jimbo Fisher said, "No, this is my guy. This is the guy that I believe is going to be the future of the program." And who knows? When you get a coach talking that highly of a guy, that means he certainly has a leg in the door. It'll be interesting to see how he's adjusted to learning the playbook. I know a couple talking to Anaya Smith and Damani Richardson about these guys. They said he has made some freshman mistakes. I mean, he is an early enrollee and is learning some new things pretty quick. But they said that if his number were to be called, if they had to throw him into the mix right now, they would be confident that he could get the job done. So I think Haynes King is your guy. I think technically Connor Wigman will finish second, but because he is a true freshman, you'll probably see Max Johnson in that backup role to kind of save some eligibility and whatnot in that situation. But if I were to be a betting man, I'd say it was a Haynes King, Connor Wigman, Max Johnson.
We were talking up Texas A&M with the spring game just basically hours away by the time we post this video. So, of course, Texas A&M with all eyes on Jimbo Fisher and company to see if they can turn all that talent into wins and possible championships starting here in 2022. Travis Brown joining us from the Eagle. Check out his work right there. Travis, of course, Isaiah Spiller, one of the most productive backs in college football the last few years. He moves on. Devin Ashane's a very interesting talent who can do all sorts of things, and Anaya Smith has been productive. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's fair to say that the production on the outside, the perimeter, the game-changing kind of playmakers haven't been in play as much as what was expected from the recruiting the last few years. Are there guys out there that you think will be on display that could break through?
Well, I think in the last couple of years, if you want to talk about the explosive playmaking ability, that has fallen onto the legs of the running backs and Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane. Those are two guys who have been able to break out some of those home runs and really get the explosive plays on the ground. I think you are right that the wide receiver situation hasn't necessarily been very solid in the last couple of years, kind of exacerbated last year by the fact that they lose their starting quarterback, and Zach Calzada was a little hit and miss through the season. That is something that I'm really interested to look at. I think if you look through Jimbo Fisher's tenure and even a little bit, well, pretty much Jimbo Fisher's tenure, the whole stable of running backs they've had have basically been possession receivers. They haven't had necessarily a field extender kind of wide receiver, and they haven't necessarily had that guy who was a go up and a vertical threat, a high point threat in a really long time. And I think that Caleb Chapman could be that guy to be the vertical threat, or the field extender, the guy who can get behind the defense. And I think that he has just been injury plagued. If you looked at that breakout game he had against Florida 2 seasons ago, he actually ended up tearing his ACL on one of those plays and was out the rest of the season, and then was injury plagued all last year. But he is a guy that I think they could look towards to be that guy. I also want to see if there's a guy out there who is that guy who can go up and high point a ball. If you want to look at those back corner end zone fades, it's not something they've necessarily been able to do a whole lot of. Moose Muhammad is a sophomore coming back who might be able to kind of be that guy. And then everyone is raving about Evan Stewart, the freshman, what he's been able to do at wide receiver, basically getting himself in the first team as a freshman. So yeah, I think they have everything pretty locked down from a running back perspective. I think seeing where they can do to spread the field out, spread the defense out a little bit, and have a few of those weapons on the outside is something I'll be interested for this season.
Hey, Travis, when we look at the defense, it's been one of the better units in college football for the past couple of years, but some of the big players and leaders have been, of course, moving on to the next level. They're replaced by guys that, shoot, if you believe in the recruiting rankings, are even more talented. What are your concerns about the defense? What are you going to be watching on Saturday?
I mean, it's a whole lot of experience returning. You lose the whole defensive line, but guys like McKinley Jackson, guys like Shamar Turner are guys that were rotational on the inside of the defensive line all through last year and have a lot of experience. Phil Diggs at end is a guy that has some experience. Then like you said, and Isaiah Rakes has some experience on the inside of the line. Then you'll mix in Walter Nolan, Gabriel Brownlow-Dinley, Shamar Stewart, some of these other 5-star guys, Anthony Lucas, that they were able to nab, and then Nye White on the edge. I think that's going to be a really, really deep position group for the Aggies on the defensive line. And then the secondary is about as experienced as they've been since Jimbo Fisher has been here, all kind of centered around Antonio Johnson and DeMarni Richardson at safety and what they'll be able to do back there. But it is for what they were lost is actually in a very experienced group. And I think that defense, again, will probably lead the way in the strength of this team this next season, even though they'll probably take some steps forward on offense as well.
Travis Brown joining us from the Eagle. Travis, you probably have a pretty unique perspective concerning this next question, because the narrative surrounding Texas A&M football, and I've been watching college football for a long, long time. Of course, this program has not won a conference championship since 1998. Tons of resources. It's never been in question. The rabid fan base, the support is through the roof. Jimbo Fisher gets thrown a ton of money, comes in, and of course, the expectations are start to win championships, which is awfully difficult to do in the SEC, but that's what the money's demanding. Now with the NIL thrown in there as well, the recruiting being what it's been for the last 3 or 4 years, but capped off by this legendary 2022 class, I think people across college football in terms of other fan bases look at Texas A&M different than they did just a few years ago. And they're becoming kind of this, you better win or else. And I don't know, want to give them necessarily a villain status, but people are wanting to see something out of Texas A&M. Otherwise, they see them as some kind of paper champion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that was asked of the players when we got to talk to them earlier this year, of if they're kind of relishing this villain role, whether it be the number one recruiting class or kind of what a lot of their coaches kind of trash talking what they were able to do with that recruiting class. I think that's a chip on their shoulder that they said they'll gladly wear moving forward. I think that. I think that nabbing a number one recruiting class and nabbing the historic nature of the recruiting class, the highest ranked on the 247 composite in its history, is impressive. But if you're going to compete at the level of the Alabamas and the Georgias and some of those schools that have been on top, the Clemsons, you have to follow that up with more top 5 recruiting classes the next couple of years to build that depth. I think that this year will sure be a test to see what some of this talent is and how they're able to mix some of that in and get some of these guys some playing time. I think the year after that, and maybe the year after that, is going to be when it's put up or shut up for the Aggies, if they can continue to haul in the same kind of recruiting classes that they were this year. But it certainly should be a step towards that direction this year with some of those guys already getting the slot into place.
Travis Brown from the Eagle. Check out his work right there. And Texas A&M, of course, wrapping up the spring this Saturday at Kyle Field. Travis, we appreciate you stopping by and laying down the knowledge for us.
Sure thing.